If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not gonna be on the streets. This revolution is in the mind. Peace and power, freedom and decolonization to all African family. From wherever you find yourself, we greet you from the African Continental Unity Party. My name is King Kabbalah, member of the communication team of the ACUP, and this is our regular rendezvous where we come together to discuss about issues related to the African survival, but most importantly to the African liberation and emancipation. And as we say, if you have two shoes, you need to sell one, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not going to be on the streets. This revolution is in the mind, because if we are not in charge of our own mind, then our bodies will be the tools that our enslavers will be using to enslave us and to enslave our people. So this is very important that in this time of a new revolution of Africa, we begin to question what happens in our mind, because this revolution, most importantly, must begin and must take place from the psychological level of our mind. Today, what I want to discuss with us is why the African independence has not succeeded. You see, since the 1960s, we are celebrating year in, year out, every year, what we believe to be the independence of our countries, whether we are in Zambia, whether we are in Angola, whether we are in the Congo, Nigeria, Ghana. We come every year to celebrate our Independence Day. But we need to really ask, do we have some improvements? Do we have some evidences of this so-called African independence? Do we have something to show to the world as a result of what we believe to be the African independence? In my case, I don't have. From where I come from, the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of Congo, there's nothing that we can show today for over 60 years of the so-called African independence. We don't have something substantial to show to the world that this is the result of the independence that we have acquired in the 1960s. Now the question becomes why we don't have something meaningful to show despite all these years of African independence. And if we don't understand why, it becomes even difficult to think about an improvement, because we need to definitely question ourselves to see where we are today, so that we can at least see what are the rooms that are left to improve ourselves and to improve our situation. Now, coming back to the question, why has African independence failed? I need to begin with a simple analogy that we all can relate to. When a baby is born today, the people who brought the baby into existence have the responsibility to take care of the baby, to nurture the baby, to look after the baby, to feed the baby, to develop the baby, or to help the baby in his development, right? So this is a responsibility, incumbent to the people who have brought the baby into existence. And it is the same thing with us as African people, with what we call our independence. Indeed, in the 1960s, of course, we achieved something that can be called African independence. In the 1960s, of course, something happened. There was a change, a very significant change. But it was up to us as African people to build upon that change. It means it was our responsibility to nurture the baby that was born in the 1960s, which is the African independence. It was our responsibility to mature the baby, to feed the baby, to maintain the baby, to keep the baby growing, so that we can at least today, after 60 or 70 years of the so-called African independence, show to the world the evidence, to show to the world the advancements that we have been able to make after we have become independent. Now, for you to understand where we have gone wrong, I want to take you far back to the Haitian Revolution, because as you know, Haiti is the first black nation in the world that organized a revolution which eventually overthrew the French barbarism and French slavery in Haiti. So, during the Haitian Revolution, black people were actually overthrowing the system of enslavement, the system of oppression, by eventually destroying or burning down all the plantations, because these plantations were symbolically a sign of oppression and a sign of destruction for these many black people. And indeed, the plantations were a sign of oppression and enslavement. So they were burning them down. And after burning down the plantations, after overthrowing the oppressive system, which was the French, slave masters, so to say, Dessalines told African people, now, okay, the French system is overthrown, has been defeated. Now it is time to go back to production. It means to go back to the plantation. And guess what? African people refused, because the plantation was a symbol of oppression and exploitation and all of that, which is right. But you see, after you got rid of these colonial enslavers, these brutal enslavers, it is now your responsibility to make sure that your system works, to make sure that your economy is functioning, to make sure that your country is in operation. That means you have the economy, you have the production, you have the food, you have everything that you need in order to make your country functioning. But that was the problem now, because these people, they didn't want to go back to the plantation and produce. And at the end of the day, the country was in trouble. Economically speaking, there was no food, there was no economy, there was no enough basic necessity to sustain life. And the people had to turn back against the leader, who was Dessalines, to think that he is the one who has not managed to make sure that the country develops or provides what the basic needs of the people. So you see, this is the number one problem, is because in our mindset, when we thought about getting our independence, or when our ancestors in Haiti thought about getting rid of French slavery, in their mind was, once the French people go away, our conditions will become better automatically, and our lives will begin to flourish, and we will have everything that we have wanted, being free, not being forced to work harder again, not being forced to be exploited again. Our lives will become better. But it doesn't work like that. There must be another hard work in order to sustain a level of life that we need. And when we look at the time of independence, is exactly the same thing that happened. During the independence period, our people were excited of getting rid of these colonial masters in order to become free, because they were exploited, they were made to work harder, they were made to pay taxes to the colonial masters, and all these oppression and exploitative means that were used by colonialists during the time of colonialism. So now our fathers were very much excited about getting free finally, not having to deal with these colonialists. But for that freedom to be matured, for that freedom to be maintained, for that freedom to develop, for that freedom to bear fruits, there has to be a work. There has to be even hard work. And this is what our people didn't do. After they were excited about getting rid of these French people, these Britain people all over the continent, they didn't do much work in order to produce what is needed for the economy of the country to flourish and to continue moving forward. And this was another challenge, and that's made that made a sudden change, so that after the independence, we had to run back to the former colonialists in order to ask to beg for loan in order to run our economies. We had to go to them so that we can call the experts to come and then teach us on how to develop our countries, teach us on how to run our economies. And this happened all over the continent, and we had to spend lots of money for these exports. Exports, I don't know, specialists in whatever domains of social development, because we didn't want to work harder. And this has been always the contradiction of African people, as far as you can consider our situation, and no matter what angle you look at us. You see, we were made to work harder to produce the economy that the colonialists needed. Or in other words, we were forced to work harder to be exploited for the economic production of Europe, of French, of Britain, whoever who was in charge of our so-called countries or colonial enclosures. We were made to work harder for them. But when we got our so-called independence, it was even the opportunity for us to work even harder in order to sustain ourselves and in order to sustain our freedom, the baby that was born during the 1960s. And this is what we didn't do. You see, if we were being exploited, forced to work, for example, 7 hours per day, when we became independent, when we became free, it was now the opportunity for us to even work 9 hours, to add more hours on top of the 7 in order to produce our economy, maintain our economy, nurture our economy, or our baby that we call freedom, and make sure that Africa does not get back to where we were. We are now able to work for ourselves and produce what we need. And this is still the mentality that kills African people today. And we can see it all over Africa. For example, when we want change in Africa, we want change in Nigeria, we want change in Ghana, the majority of African people believe that that change will happen through votes, through election, by voting for a different candidate. It automatically will bring the change that we want, employment, economy, all these things that we want in Africa. But it doesn't work like that. It still does not work like that. You see, it's only gonna work. It means, in other words, our freedom that we have, that we want, for it to grow and to manifest itself in our everyday reality, it needs something else from every single African man and African woman, no matter where you are, no matter what is your experience, your background. We all have the responsibility to make sure that our baby called freedom can grow, can develop, and can help us to make sure that before the end of the 21st century, Africa is on a different path from what it is today. You see, so electing somebody and expecting that the next morning things will become better, we'll have job, we'll have this and that, it is still a dream. You see, it is this mentality that means that we put our hope into other things to see our lives automatically changing. Even within the Pan-Africanism itself, we have some Pan-Africanists who believe that by destroying the borders, colonial borders that we have inherited from colonialism, Africa will change automatically. But it doesn't happen like that. It's not going to create the job that we want. It's not going to create the economy that we want. It's not going to create the sustainability that we want in Africa. It's only by doing hard work that we'll be able to create those things. Colonial borders, we get rid of them tomorrow. The next morning we might have civil war because of no much resources, no much economy, no much job, and the immigration, all those kind of things. It will create probably civil war. So the solution is to work harder to create our own economy, and we don't have to wait for the borders to be dismantled for these things to happen, we can begin right now to do what is necessary, the hard work that is needed to be done for the economy of Africa to be produced, for the job, for whatever that we need to take place in Africa to happen. So what do we do? This is the important question. Are we in this system of celebrating symbols that have no substance of every year? I mean, every year we celebrate our so-called national independence days, that we don't even do something meaningful to achieve that independence, to maintain that baby. As I started by saying, when you have a baby that you don't take care of, you don't mature the baby, you don't feed the baby, you don't give the baby the proper attention that the baby needs, the baby will eventually die. I mean, that's the situation in which we are today as African people. We are so-called independent countries, but our reality solely depends on the decisions that are being taken in Europe, in America, and today in China and Moscow. And this is not the future that we can expect for our children. So now, what needs to be done for the independence of Africa to be effective is that we all have to accept the responsibility of working harder for ourselves. You see, we have been made to work very much. We have been made to work so much for other people, for our oppressors. Maybe now it is time for us to work for ourselves more than we have been working for other people, and we can do this. And talking about this, I'm not implying working very much in the company that has employed you and stuff like that. I'm talking about working harder for Africa to guarantee the future of Africa and the true freedom that we all want as African people. And we can begin this right now. The only thing that each and every one of us need to do is to make sure that we belong to an organization that is aiming for the African liberation and African emancipation. It is really a contradiction for you to expect that Africa has to change, has to improve, but you belong to none of these organizations around that are working to bring about the liberation and emancipation of Africa. There is a contradiction. So we all need to belong to organizations. In other words, we need to be organized, because that is how we will be able to change things. The forces that we are dealing with currently are well organized and well structured forces that are working 24 hours to undermine every effort of African development. And we don't have other choice, other option than to organize ourselves for that purpose. You see, we have think tank groups all over the world that are working on how to maintain Africa in the condition of subjection in which we are today. So we are our organizations that are working secretly for the development. Not even for the development, that's the wrong word. For the liberation and emancipation of Africa, because that's where we need to begin our struggle with. So if you are not in any of these organizations around the continent or in the diaspora that are working for the liberation and emancipation of Africa, we invite you gladly into the African Continental Unity Party. Please join us. Let us together establish this foundation of the African global power base, which is our vision, because we believe that the only salvation of Africa is when Africa has the power to look after herself. That is when Africa or African people will be respected. That is when African people will enjoy the freedom and the independence that we acquired in the 1960s. Otherwise, we don't have a better chance to survive beyond the 21st century. We are living in a dangerous time of danger, but also time of opportunities, because danger and opportunity are always the two faces of the same coin. So we are facing danger, but exactly when we have to look on the flip side of the coin, we'll be able to see enormous opportunities that we can eventually take advantage of in this time of global shifting, in order to acquire the true freedom and the true emancipation that Africa needs today. So join the African Continental Unity Party. Let us work together. Support us in any way you can so that this vision can grow and this vision can reach so many people around the continent and in the diaspora so that we can give a better future to Africa, the future that we as African people have designed and the future that we want. So in a nutshell, what I want to say here is that everything has a cost attached to it. Anything that you want in life, and if I need to precisely express this, I want to say that slavery has a price or has a cost. So is also freedom. So whether you want to remain slave, you pay a cost, you pay a price for it. You get worked every day of your life for your slave master. The same thing when you want to be free, you also have to pay the price for that freedom. And in this case, our price will be enduring hard work in order to establish the base that we need and the basis over which the new Africa will be built. So if you want Africa to be free, you need to question as well, what are the price that you are willing to pay for Africa to be free? You see, as I said, when we have a new baby, we need to take care of the baby. Financially, we need to support the baby. Materially, we need to support the baby emotionally in any house. So the same thing with the freedom of Africa. It has to be supported financially, materially, emotionally, spiritually. We need to give all that we have to make sure that this freedom, this baby freedom that we have, will grow, will be sustainable, and will be beneficial, not just to our generation, but to the future generation. The challenge with Africa is that we have come to love money so much, to love things so much, that we don't want to use them or part of them to acquire the better freedom that we want or that we need actually. So this is the problem. So it is time now to try to organize ourselves in or through certain organizations that exist today for the future of Africa. So one of these organizations is the African Continental Unity Party. And sometimes you may think that, well, politics have nothing to do with the politics because politics is so corrupt and stuff like that, that we normally hear from the mainstream or from the propaganda of those who want to grasp the power of our institutions so that they can dictate our lives the way they want us or they want our lives to be. I want to say to you this: the politics is one of the important ways that we have to seize in order to change our reality. If you neglect politics, if you undermine political institutions, then you definitely indirectly undermine the future of Africa and your future and the future of your children. I am usually telling people that it is good to have the knowledge that you have, to have the religion that you have. It's good to have whatever Kemetic identity or whatever that you claim to have, your religion, your knowledge, your degree, your job that pays your bill. All these things are necessary, but our lives, your life and my life, will never profoundly change until we embark in the politics of our liberation. But if we don't do that now, we will remain enjoying the politics of our oppression. Think about that. Anything that you have today, your job, your knowledge, your degree is good, but for our lives to change, we must all collectively as African people in an organized manner involve or get involved in the politics of our liberation. Otherwise, we'll have to enjoy the politics of our oppression. And that will be the politics of the people who take advantage of what we neglect. The moment that we step back from political engagement, other people are taking advantage of that to make the policies that will affect our lives badly. We have to think about it. So this is a continental political party that we are aiming to implement in every African countries so that we can seize the political power of our institutions and amend the laws and the policies that will be working for the African people, not for the elites, but for the majority African people. And it's the only way we have to do this, through the through the spirit of Pan-Africanism. I hope this message was useful to you. And if it was, please, I plead with you to like the video and to share the video. Please don't leave the video, don't end the video without subscribing to this video. It will help us a lot. Please help us to reach 1,000 subscribers, which can help us a lot. As you know, YouTube will eventually open some doors for you when you have over 1,000 subscribers. So please do that. Subscribe, share the video, and help our voice to reach as many people as we can, so that this agenda can become successful, because it succeeds only when all of us we come together and do it together. If you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is in the mind. Peace and power. Thank you very much.